Hi everybody, my name is Jin Ben and welcome to iHome Church. This morning I have a question for you, and the question is, can a woman be Pope? Well, at the Third Vatican Council, Pope Francis addresses this very question, and I really want to share his quote with you. He says that Catholicism is now a modern and reasonable religion. God is changing and evolving as we are, for God lives in us and in our hearts. When we spread love and kindness in the world, we touch our own divinity and recognize it. In accordance with our new understanding, we will begin to ordain women, cardinals, bishops, and priests. In the future, it is my hope that we will have a woman pope one day. Let no door be closed to women that is open to men. You know, when I was attending divinity school many years ago, I had some Catholic friends who would always joke that they belonged to one of the dinosaur religions in the world, in that the Catholic Church is very slow to change. And, you know, I'm sure if I met up with them today and talked about what Pope Francis has shared, I am sure that they would be quite surprised at what they've heard. But, you know, this is not too surprising to me, in that my father, the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, talked about the Pacific Rim era as an era of woman. And in 1994, he started this organization that was headed by my mother as the international president, called Women's Federation for World Peace. And he really pushed women to get involved in all aspects of public life and to kind of take the reins in sharing the breaking news of God and true parents and the beauty of the blessing with the world. And one of the most beautiful things that came out of this organization is this bridge ceremony where different sisters representing their different cultures, different religious background, different countries would cross this bridge together as sisters, and really promising and committing to each other to work towards world peace. And I realized that this year, when Pope Francis talks about one day having a female pope, it happens to be the 21st year since my father first launched this Women's Federation for World Peace, and 3 years since his ascension. And so I feel like, you know, he is still moving our humankind forward in incredible ways that maybe we may not fully understand or comprehend. And not only is the Pope representing one of the oldest and the biggest religions of the world, kind of trying to open up and present God as really as a God of embrace and love, and no longer as the God of judgment and fear. We also have the UN announcing several days ago the launch of what they call He for She, Impact 10-10-10. And it's a one-year pilot program that they would like to really work in terms of working towards the advancement of gender equality and women's empowerment. And they would like to get the cooperation of governments, of universities and corporations as instruments of change to really kind of affect our world at large at creating this gender equality. And, you know, I feel that many times when I was going through divinity schools, and I had many questions, and one of the most profound discussions that I had with my father was when he asked me, you know, now that you're at divinity school and you're studying and taking courses there, what is the big question? What is the most difficult and the biggest question that everybody is dealing with? And I responded, well, Father, it's very simple. I mean, it's the problem that we've been dealing with all throughout history. It's the relationship between men and women, and how do we understand our roles as sons and daughters of God? And, as we've seen our true Father unfold and really liberate women to kind of own up as that eternal daughter and mother and a sister of God, I realized that it's an incredible time that we're living in. Because, right now, in the body of true parents, we have our Father in spirit world, our true mother here. We have a representation of the unity between heaven and earth. And this is really the first time after Father's ascension that true mother takes the reins of our worldwide movement and becomes a leader for our faith. And of course there is always the question of how much authority does she have, what authority does she have, what can she do, what can she not do. And then of course there is always some rumblings in the background as to how can a housewife who has been supporting her husband's work for the last 50 or so years suddenly be catapulted into worldwide leadership. And, whenever I hear somebody mention her lack of credentials, I like to refer back to the story of Joan of Arc. Here was a 17-year-old girl from provincial France who was tapped by God to lead her country at a very, very difficult time. And when she tried to convince those in power of her calling, many people questioned her credibility, her credentials. What does she have to show for in terms of leadership skills, in terms of her abilities, when she was just a teenage girl from the countryside of France. But God works in mysterious ways. And the story of Joan of Arc has always taught me that we don't decide who we think is fit to do God's work. It's God that decides. And in this case, it is not us, you and I, that decides who true father or who true mother is. God decides who true father and who true mother is. And true mother stands in a singularly important position in that she stands as the victorious Eve, and she can only stand in the position as the victorious Eve when her husband, the Messiah of the world, proclaims her as such. And we realize that the only one who really has the power to proclaim whether true mother is victorious or whether she's a failure is just the Messiah, true father. We as her adult children do not have the authority to say anything of the sort. In a way, we as adult children, brothers and sisters all around the world, it's our job to honor the sanctity of true parents in our life and really safeguard them and support them to the best of our abilities. And so when I see my mother taking the helm of the church, I as a woman looking at her, of course has a certain level of pride in my mother being that appointed person to do God's work. But at the same time, having been through some of the difficulties of being a woman in leadership, I really feel for her. And I remember when my father first launched this Women's Federation for World Peace, I volunteered to go with her on the tour because I really wanted to support her in her role as the international president. And I was, for the first time in my life, truly inspired to be a part of this organization, to be a part of this women's era. And I remember one of the countries that we had visited, there was a Oriental leader who was responsible for taking care of my mother and the team that was supporting mother. And I could tell that he was very, very distressed. He could not look at mother in the eye. His body language was really that of somebody suffering. He was literally suffering, and his body was caving in and huffing and puffing and all over the place. And so I asked him, I said, could I have a word with you? And took him outside. And out in the hallway, we sat at one of the benches, and I said, what's going on? I know that something's bothering you. And then he was just huffing and puffing. And I said, please tell me what's going on, because your behavior, your attitude is inappropriate in terms of us trying our best to attend mother during these speaking engagements. And then he kind of turned to me and he said, this is not the reason why I joined the Unification Church. And I said, excuse me? And he said, this is not the reason. I did not join to serve a woman. And I said, you're not serving a woman. You are attending True Mother. We are her support team. And then he took off his shoes and started banging on the bench, like the way Khrushchev, banged on the desk with his shoe, and said, this is an abomination, abomination. And I said, Mr. So-and-so, I said, God works in mysterious ways. And God is asking us to unite with true parents. This is Father's will, to unite with true mother, to share this message of hope for all womankind. Can you not unite with it? And he just got up and just walked off. And so I said, please, 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 let's try our best. Let's try our best. And so he calmed down a little bit. But, I got a taste of the culture that we were dealing with. Having grown up in this world, I know very well how difficult it is to gain acceptance in certain role as a woman. Even in the world of academia, it's not an easy one. But to realize that even in our culture, in our unificationist movement culture, that it was such a difficulty for most of the brothers to accept this new role that God was unfolding. I could tell that it was an incredible battle for this brother. And even in my own experience as the chairman and CEO of HSA, or the Unification Church of America, very soon after I was inaugurated into office, there was a meeting called by my younger brother Hyunjin, and he had contacted all the major and important leaders, 75 of them in total, and had them congregate in one of the rooms at the New Yorker for the grand announcement that he was going to make, which was that he was the newly appointed leader of America. And this was when I was the incumbent CEO, incumbent president. And the interesting thing about this whole experience for me is that not one person checked with me as to the validity of his claims, or even double check to see if I knew anything about it. They just simply called everybody downstairs without consulting my office, which is the president of the church, without consulting me, who is the president and CEO. And all of this was done simply because my brother, Hyunjin, was a boy. If I were a boy, this would have never taken place. But the culture of our movement was such that even if they did not hear from father, or let alone from father's representative to America, which was me, somebody who was a male representative from my family could call everybody for this grand meeting of a new announcement. And he had asked to meet with me shortly before 1 o'clock. And so I went to meet him at the 30th floor of the New Yorker. And he came in and he said, I want you to know that father talked to me this morning and father told me you're out and I'm in. And I said, pardon me? And he said, you're out and I'm in. And I said, what do you mean? And so he said, father said very clearly to me and wanted me to convey to you that I am the new leader of America and you're no longer the leader. And I said, okay, if that's what father wants, then that's what will be done. But I have not heard anything from father. And so until I hear from father himself, this position is not something that I just walk into. This position was given to me by True Father, and I cannot leave my position until True Father asks me to. So I understand that you, because he told me he called everybody for a meeting downstairs and he wanted me to go downstairs with him to announce his new appointment. And I said, if father wanted that, then I'm very happy for you. But until I hear from father directly, myself, I cannot go down with you. And then of course he got very angry and threatened a lot of different things. And I said, with all due respect, if you claim what you claim is true, then I wish you the best. But until I hear from True Father, I cannot move with you. And I got up and I took my leave. And as I was leaving, he says, well, what do you expect me to do? I said, you've already done what you've wanted to do. So go ahead and do what you want to do. But I cannot be there with you. And as I left the 30th floor, of course, there were different people waiting for Hyunjin to come out. And they were looking at me like they're wondering what's going on. And I knew that something was wrong. Because here was this meeting called 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is 2 or 3 in the morning Korea time. And therefore, I couldn't call right away, wake up my father to double check. I would have to wait a couple hours for him to get up for Hundokwe time, and then I could double check. So there was something in me that told me that something's wrong with this picture. But what really astounded me, what really surprised me, is that the culture in our movement with decades of male leadership have customized the brothers and sisters to only react to male leadership. It doesn't matter whether I was the president or not. They didn't even double check or even bother to call or to talk to my vice president or to talk to different people in my at headquarters. They simply just called everybody. And so when I've experienced this in my culture, you know, I'm not talking about this to point fingers at anybody, but we have to be honest about the culture that we're dealing with in order to move ahead, in order to make progress. And of course, later, when I checked with father, none of it turned out to be true. And it was a total bluff. But the fact that he could carry it out was simply astounding. And so that's the culture that I had to deal with. And that's the culture that True Mother is dealing with. And so for a lot of people who are not too happy about her leadership, then immediately the question of performance comes in. Well, she's not performing up to par. Well, True Mother is not your typical CEO. She is our true mother. She is a representative of true parents. It's not our job to be judging True Mother's performance. If we feel that her performance is not up to par, then it's our job to help her perform better as a leader. And I think going forward, this is incredibly important, because if we cannot resolve men and women problem within our family or within our larger community, how the heck are we going to solve this problem out in the larger world? Well, the interesting thing is, because we are all divine beings and because we're all connected and because we're all God's children, what we do affects the world. What True Father announces in 1994 affects the world. 21 years later, the biggest church in the world is talking about one day having a female pope. But in our church, here we are ahead of the curve again. We have, in a way, our version of the female pope. But better than that, we have true parents, in which True Mother is one component. And so I feel that this is an incredible time for our movement to grow, because it's going to challenge a lot of us, and it's going to challenge a lot of brothers who have been accustomed to a certain way of looking at women or their daughters or their sisters. And this is the time when we really have to understand what True Father means when he talks about the only way you can really have unity is if you can have one heart. And there's this beautiful quote that he shares during a speech that he gave in 1971, February 12th. He says, "You and I are in a position of mind and body unity, that is, husband and wife, parent and children, being of one heart. Oneness in mind cannot be achieved in a state where one stands above the other and the other below. If parents are above and their children are below, they cannot be of one heart. Only when both are positioned on the same level of equal footing can they be one in mind. In other words, only when both their internal and external relationship are in one plane can they become one in mind. This holds true for a couple as well. They can be of one heart only at a place where their internal and external, front and back relationship is horizontal, but never if it is vertical." When True Father talks about the relationship being horizontal, he's talking about a relationship being on the same plane, or what he calls one plane. They have to be on equal footing. It cannot be one above the other if we want true and a beautiful unity of heart. There has to be two people arriving at the center voluntarily, lovingly, and with respect. And that's what he's talking about, even in relation to parent-child relationship. How many times have we as parents expected our child to just simply obey? But Father is saying, if we want to create beautiful unity of heart, we have to allow or see our children on an equal footing as young adult, and come to our relationship or come to our unity with love, respect, and honor. In essence, Father is saying, look guys, too many times we've hollered out unity, but we've hollered out unity in terms of the realm of command and obey. But Father is saying the unity, one heart, is accomplished on a horizontal level, not vertical, not command and obey, but two people really coming together in oneness of heart because they want to, not because they're told to. And they want to move their family forward. So this is incredibly beautiful, because in what he is saying, he gives the solution to unity. How do we create unity? Well, if we want one heart, if we want unity, and unity implies that people are being brought together from different standpoints. You don't have unity if we all think the same. We have uniformity, but not unity. But what we are striving here for is unity, knowing full well that every individual is unique and different cultures are unique. But we can still bring different cultures, religions, and traditions and different families together if we strive towards the unity of one heart. And that's the beautiful thing about the message of true love. It's incredibly liberating. And for me as a woman, to say that I am a proud unificationist, because through the victory of our true mother and through the victory of our true parents, I no longer have to be burdened by the weight of the old ways of looking at women when we talk about the history of Christianity. Women were not allowed to have official positions of the church. We were not allowed to have a voice. We were not given standing because we were seen as the perpetrator of the fall, as the one who started it all. But in our true parents, with Father really proclaiming true mother as that victorious Eve, in a way he is liberating all of womankind from the burden and the weight of history, of Christian history, or our understanding, or the incomplete picture that we've had to deal with in our life of faith for years. And finally, we can stand gloriously as that eternal daughter together with our eternal sons and together with our eternal brothers and eternal husbands. So we realize that here we are promoting and working towards world peace, but we ain't gonna get there unless we have the true unity of the most important components in the universe, sons and daughters of God. That's why whenever I like to think about the word peace, I take it as an acronym. P for our eternal Heavenly Parent. We start from the top. And then the letter E stands for eternal sons and daughters. We are his and her eternal sons and daughters. And then the letter A reminds us to live for the sake of others. And the letter C reminds us to be compassionate towards one another. And the last letter E stands for internal and external excellence. And so if we remind ourselves of this acronym, then we can kind of remain focused on the most important thing in life, which is unity and world peace. And I feel that, how beautiful would it be, starting with our own family, if our husbands could start unlocking or breaking the chain that women have been chained to for so many years. Maybe our old ways of looking at what a wife is supposed to be. What about a new way of really appreciating that woman as the daughter of God? Or how beautiful would it be if the brothers in our movement says to the sisters, let me be the one to break the chains that have held women down for centuries, blaming you guys for the sins of the world. Let me be the one to break the chain. Can you imagine how incredibly empowering and beautiful that might be? Or how incredibly beautiful would it be if the children can say to our mother, saying, let us be the one to break the chains that have held down women leadership for so long. And let us be the one to honor you, to support you, and nurture you. How beautiful would that be? And then our true mother in turn, instead of letting the brothers and the men of the world eat it, for making so many women's lives miserable in the context of a religious life. How beautiful would it be if she is the one reaching out a hand and elevating her children? If she is the one reaching out her hand, elevating her brothers, her sons, and the fathers. Can you imagine how incredibly beautiful that is? Well, I think that's what our Heavenly Parent wants to see, starting with you and me, starting with our own families, starting with our community. And only then can we tackle the big, wide world. And so I want to leave you with this beautiful song. It's called Woman in Chains by Tears for Fears. And it really says, we should be the ones breaking the chains that really hold women hostage. And he asks, we better love loving and you better behave. So brothers and sisters, we better love loving and we better behave and be good to one another and really live as one family under God. So take care. God bless.
Loving and you better behave. Woman in chains, woman in chains. 'Cause I'm in the great white house, says she's fine, she'll always come. Well, I feel lying and waiting is an old man's steal, and I feel hopelessly weighed down by your wires of steel. It's a world gone crazy, keeps woman in chains. Trades her soul as skin and bones, sells the only thing she owns. Woman in chains, men of stone, men of stone. Feel deep in your heart there's a wound time can't heal, and I feel somebody somewhere is trying to breathe. Well, you know what I mean. It's a world gone crazy, keeps woman in chains. It's under my skin, but out of my hands. I'll tear it apart, but I won't understand. We will not The greatness of man gone crazy keeps woman in chains.
If you have any questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to jinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. And for those of you who would like to contribute to our work here at iHome Church, just click on the donate button. Thank you.